Yo, what is up, guys? It's coming back here again today with another video, another Thunder related video, a topic that I've really been wanting to make a video on a while because a lot of people talk to me about it on Twitter. It's the whole Sam Presti draft pick obsession thing. In case you didn't see earlier, the reason I'm making this video right now is because the Thunder just traded Trevor Ariza to the Miami Heat for another draft pick. I'll get into the details of the trade in a second. But I've really wanted to make a video talking about the whole draft pick thing, why we have so many draft picks, what's the point of it. People are asking questions like, you can't draft that many players, so why do we have so many picks? What are we going to do with them? And I'm going to explain to you exactly what we can do with them, why we have so many options, and why Sam Presti is doing his best to stockpile as many as possible. What's the benefits in it? If you're keeping track at home, we now have 32 draft picks in the next 7 drafts, which I don't need to tell you is a lot, especially if you include the pick swaps, which makes it 35 draft picks in the next 7 drafts. If you're doing the math, that's about 5 per draft, which is way more than most teams have. It's by far and away the most draft capital in the entire NBA. You could probably find 2, 3, 4 teams combined that we have more draft capital than. If you find the right teams, it's a lot, and there's reasonings behind it. He's just not getting draft picks for the hell of it. There's reasons we have these draft picks. But before I get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Ariza trade. It wasn't big enough to make a whole video on, which is why I'm just prefacing this video with it. We traded Trevor Ariza to the Miami Heat for Myers Leonard and a 2027 second-round pick. Myers Leonard was only in the trade for a contract to match Trevor Ariza's. He's not a guy I ever want to see play for the Thunder, and he's not a guy we will ever see play for the Thunder, thankfully. And that's because there are reports coming out that we're either going to use his contract in a trade to match something, or we're just going to buy him out after the trade deadline. He will never play a game in a Thunder uniform, and I'm very cool with that. As for Trevor Ariza, he never did play a Thunder game. He was a guy who came here and said, I don't want to be here, and he's just been working out in Miami since then. Good news is now he can just walk to the arena from wherever he's been working out for the past few months, so that's cool for him. Solid shooter, solid defender for the Miami Heat if he is the player he was last season before he ended up not playing this year. So if he is able to return to that form, solid pickup for the Heat. A team that's trying to compete with a loaded top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference. We could talk about the Nets, Sixers, and Bucks really headlining that conference. The Heat are trying to do all they can to kind of make up for the loss of Jay Crowder, kind of just get up to the level of that competition, and this is an addition that might help them do it. I think they might need a little bit more, but it doesn't hurt. And like I said, Myers Leonard wasn't playing for them anyways. He was hurt and in other controversies. So, it's a solid trade for them, and we ended up getting back a 2027 second-round pick from them, which is really what I care about on our side of things. And you may be like, why do you care about a second-round pick? And yes, it is in 2027, 6 years away, but there's a possibility that could be a solid pick. Imagine if the Miami Heat are the worst team in the NBA at that point. They've tried to contend for a few seasons now, and by the time 2027 rolls around, they're at the bottom of the standings. That pick would then be the 31st pick in the draft, which is a really solid pick to have. There's a ton of talent to be found there. The Thunder just recently got Teo Maledon right around that range, and he's been phenomenal in his first half season with the Thunder. Only 19 years old, has shown a ton of promise, and we got him around that area. So it's not a bad pick at all to have. Not bad to take the gamble, especially, like I said, when it's for a player who wasn't playing for us anyways. And that brings us to draft picks. That brings us to why Sam Presti is going after so many draft picks. And really, it just comes down to trying to give yourself the most options for the future. The Thunder are in a weird position right now. We're trying to tank. It's not working. We don't know where our draft pick's going to end up. We're relying on Houston to end up getting a bad draft pick, but not too bad since it's top 4 protected. If they land outside that top 4, we get their draft pick. Otherwise, we won't, and we miss out on a really elite prospect, which would suck. But all we can do right now is cross our fingers and hope. But Sam Presti is giving us options. And that's what you have with draft picks. Everything in this league is an asset. Players, contracts, draft picks, everything in this league is an asset. And draft picks are one of the most versatile assets of all. Probably the most versatile asset of all. Because there's no limit on how many you can throw in. There's no contract limits where, you can't throw in this many players because that's making too much money. There's roster limitations. I can't give a team 7 players because they can only have 15 guys on their roster and they'll end up having to cut some of them. So that takes away from the value. But draft picks, you can have as many as you want. If you haven't been able to tell from Sam Presti, you can have as many draft picks as you want, and there's so many things you can do with those draft picks. I'll give you a couple examples. Imagine in this draft, Houston does end up falling to the 5th spot. And we are like, okay, awesome, we got this pick from them. But we really want someone at pick 4 or pick 3 that we think will be off the board by then. Sam Presti calls up whoever has pick 3 or pick 4 and goes, hey, we have this 5th overall pick we'll give to you. and 2 or 3 first-round picks in the future. What do you say? Unless the team is super in love with that prospect, they're going to say yes, because that's so much extra capital. This draft has a ton of star level guys, and you don't think a team's going to move down a couple spots because, oh, we really just don't want 3 extra first round picks. No, they're going to move down. And that's part of the versatility of these draft picks. Moving up in the draft is a huge opportunity for you to build on your team. If we want to get this team right, and Sam Presti really wants to get this right after having Harden, Durant, Westbrook, and we didn't end up winning much, he wants to get this right. And so he's stockpiling these assets so we can make the moves to make that team work the best that we want to. And that example of moving up in the draft is a huge example, especially when this team is way better than expected. If we're not going to tank, we better get some draft picks to be able to move up and get the guy we want to build this team for the future. If we have to lob a team 4 or 5 first-round picks for that first overall pick, I don't think Sam Presti is going to hesitate in doing that. Will that team be willing to part with it? Maybe not, because Cade Cunningham and all the other guys at the top of the draft are studs. But that's a possibility, maybe not in this draft, but also in future drafts, because we have draft picks for the next, like I said, 7 years. You could also talk about the fact that Oklahoma City is not a place where team or players really want to come to. We are not going to win in free agency. No team is going to look at the Los Angeles Lakers and the Oklahoma City Thunder and go, yeah, I'm going to play for the Thunder right now. No one's going to do that. And that's just the reality of the NBA. We're a small market team in Oklahoma. It's not going to happen. Not over the Los Angeles Lakers, not over the Miami Heat, not over like a Brooklyn Nets or a Clippers. We just don't win like that. And so imagine in a couple years, we have an opportunity to get a superstar. The only way we're going to get that is through trade. We traded for Melo. We traded for Paul George. We would be very willing to do it again. We ended up trading for SGA too. We traded for Chris Paul with Russell Westbrook. Do you think Chris Paul, well, actually Chris Paul maybe would have come to Oklahoma City, but do you think Paul George comes to Oklahoma City if he's a free agent? No, he doesn't. He goes to the Lakers or the Clippers, like he ended up going to the Clippers or wanting to go to the Clippers in the end. And so all these draft picks give us the chance to get a superstar without free agency. We don't even need to worry about that. Imagine Karl Anthony Towns in 2 or 3 seasons is like, I want out of the Timberwolves. He's put up some great numbers, but the Wolves just can't get over the hump, and he's like, I want out. Sam Presti calls up the Timberwolves and goes, hey, we have salary to match Karl Anthony Towns. We can match that for you, and we'll throw in 5-6 draft picks. What do you say? It's a yes. What do you think? What do you think he says? He says yes. Whoever is the GM of the Timberwolves at the time, they say yes, because there's no chance they're going to say no. If a player wants out and Sam Presti is just going to throw you draft picks, there's no chance you say no. And then we had Karl Anthony Towns to this team, which presumably has SGA playing at a all-star caliber level, like he already is this season. 2-3 years down the line, he'll only improve. We've gotten more young players from the drafts. We've built this team up, and we throw in a Karl Anthony Towns. That team has the potential to contend if everything works out the way that we want it to. Additionally, if we're trying to be a contender and we want to pick up role players, the best way to pick up role players for cheap is through the draft. If you are, say we're contending in 2025, and we really need some players for this team, like this past season or 2 seasons ago, the Los Angeles Lakers had like LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Kuzma. Those were their only 3 players at one time in the offseason. And then they ended up getting a steal in the draft in Talen Horton-Tucker. That was a huge piece they picked up, and they had him because they had a draft pick then. With all of these draft picks we have, we could either A, add a star-level talent, if imagine that one of those Clippers picks that we have from the SGA trade ends up being huge for us. Imagine Kawhi leaves, and we have the first overall pick while we're already contending. We can either then use that to pick up another young player to continue to add to the young core and build on the dynasty, or we ship off that number 1 overall pick to some team that has an unhappy star, and we add another star to an already loaded core that is trying to contend. There's just so many possibilities. If the picks aren't good, then we just add cheap role players who are really solid, because Sam Presti clearly is a great evaluator of talent. I don't think I need to tell you that. We add cheap role players at the end of the draft to a team that needs players, because when you have to pay guys, like if we have to pay SGA, say we're paying him like a supermax at that point. Say we're paying SGA like $50 million a year if the cap keeps rising. It's going to happen. We'll presumably have a second and or third star, and both of those guys would be making a ton of money unless they're still on their rookie contracts. You get hard capped really fast. And so when you need to pick up those cheap role players, second round picks are huge for that. Like I said, we picked up Teo Maledon around that 31-ish range that Miami Heat pick could end up being in 2027. Hopefully, it's very possible. It's not around that range, but presumably it could be there. And if it's there, that's a huge pickup for a championship contending team if you can find the right talent there. So draft picks provide you so much versatility, and like I said, they don't have contracts attached to them. If there's a draft where we're like, oh, we don't like our draft, we don't like the pick that we have right now, we can just trade it for a pick in another year because some team is going to see talent that they like there. And if a team like say we have the pick 17 in the 2026 NBA draft or something like that from like the Clippers, and the Chicago Bulls are like, oh shoot, we really want this player at pick 17 in the 2025 NBA draft. They call us up, we're like, okay, give us your pick 2 years down the line, and we just keep trading assets like that. You never have to lose assets. Sam Presti lost an asset in Kevin Durant, and I don't think he ever wants to do that again. He traded Paul George the second he said he was unhappy. He traded Russell Westbrook. He said, I'm getting assets for these guys. Trevor Ariza didn't want to play for us. He said, okay, I'll get a second round pick for you. If you get assets, you never lose. You could get the worst of some trades, but you never lose. And Sam Presti wins a lot more than he loses in these trades, and that's because he goes after assets. He knows how valuable they are. And this level of draft capital has never been seen in the NBA, which means that this level of opportunity has never been seen in the NBA. Shai-Gilgeous is in his early 20s and is looking like a superstar in the future. He's looking like he has the potential to be a top 10 player in the NBA in the future. And if we use those draft picks to add superstars next to him, if we use them to trade up in the draft and add a young superstar next to him, if we use it to even draft role players later in his career to help him compete and whoever else we picked up throughout those years for a championship, that's a win. And none of these trades matter. The whole point is to win a championship, and all these draft picks we get add to that possibility. So if anyone asks you why Sam Presti is trading for so many draft picks, that's why. Opportunity. Because with draft picks, you have unlimited opportunity. So that's my take on the whole draft picks thing. If you wanted to hear it from me, I've tweeted about it a couple times, but I can't tweet as much as I can say in a 12-minute video. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you think about the whole draft pick thing. Sam Presti, I guarantee it, is going to have almost 40 draft picks in those next 7 drafts by the time this deadline wraps up. He's going to get something for George Hill. I think something's coming for Mike Muscala, potentially Al Horford. He's going to get picks, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are more guys that I didn't even just name that end up getting moved. So keep your eye on it. My Twitter's blowing up, so now I'm afraid that another trade was made. No, doesn't seem like it. All right, we're good. I thought I was going to have to mention something else in this video, but that'll be all for right now. I will see you guys later. Real one say back.